There we go. Hello, everyone. It is so nice to be here with you at the Health and Halacha Conference. I'm Dr. Judith Fogel. A little bit about myself. I'm a Nishmat Yoetzet Halacha. I teach Gemara and Halacha in Midrash Harova. I work for the Eden Center running their Kala training program, and I'm also a sexologist. So I'm here with all these different hats tonight to speak about the topic of unconsummated marriages. This is not me giving a lecture, but rather this is an Ask Me Anything. So all of you could write your questions in the chats, in the room chat, in the private chats with the question and answers. And as we go through, I will be answering those questions. There's just one disclaimer here. I'll be using medical terms for all the body parts, and I will be speaking with explicit terms. So just to be prepared that I am saying everything as it is. So that's number one. Also, for people who might have experienced unconsummated marriages or are going through this at the time, some of this stuff could be triggering. This isn't Ask Me Anything, so you're free to ask questions, but also I think it's important that if anything comes up, you're free to contact me, any of the Yotzot Halacha, who can deal with this, a rabbinic figure, a sex therapist, or a lot of people that are out there. So if anything comes up during the session that you want to discuss further, please feel free to contact me, and we can discuss further. So let's see if I will take also some of the questions were asked beforehand, and otherwise I will go through the questions as they come up. So let's start off with the first question. You said this session was on unconsummated marriages. How long do we have to be unsuccessful for it to be considered unconsummated, to be an unconsummated marriage? So this question, and I think it's going to repeat itself a lot here, is that there's a lot of times there's a word that's called unsuccessful, that couples are unsuccessful. I would actually like to take that word out of our word book when we're discussing unconsummated marriages. There's not this end goal that we have to get to with sexuality, that we want to get to one place and one place only, and therefore we are either successful or unsuccessful. It's the same language of we keep on trying, we can't get to this, etc. And I think that it's really, really important to think of sex as like a bigger picture, that there's not one specific goal within sex. There's a lot going on. And therefore, especially as we teach, chatan and kalas, especially as we talk to couples that are in this situation of unconsummated marriages, it is so important not just to focus on one end goal, but to discuss the whole process that goes on. That's firstly. So whenever that question comes in, we're going to talk about the word unsuccessful. Number two, how long? That's the major question. And it really depends on, first of all, people are like, what's it called? First, it really depends on the stress that it's causing the couple. Meaning, it's important for the couple to take their time and to relax. And I know that there's a lot of different halachic opinions regarding this, meaning at what point does the couple have to try to have sex? At what point should they be, starting their sexual journey? And let's say, for example, there are some who say on the wedding night itself that there's a chiyuv to be together. And the other line of thought that there's, don't even start, Rav Melamed says, don't even start till after Sheva Brachot to be together. And I think that both of those, chiyuvs that you have to be together at a certain time just causes a lot more stress. That really what we're talking about is a couple taking their time, enjoying each other, trying to get to know each other. And especially if there's a couple that hasn't been touching beforehand and they're shomer negiah beforehand, it takes a lot of time to be able to get into a bedroom with another person and to get undressed. And therefore, let the couple take their time. And therefore, it really depends on the stress. And I think that a lot of that stress is from the outside world, putting a stress that there's a time limit. I want to give a story for this. I once was teaching a chatan and kala that were sexually active before their wedding. And the woman had experienced vaginismus. Vaginismus is where there's a tightening up of the pelvic floor muscles. And we were discussing that regarding bedikot and how she was going to do bedikot and how it was affecting the checks that you do before the wedding. And I was really curious. I'm like, how is it possible that you have vaginismus, that you experience vaginismus, and you were able to be sexually active before your wedding? Meaning, how is it possible to have sex if you have vaginismus? And she said it like this. She said, well, when we first started to be sexually active, we tried a little bit each and every night, or not every night, but whenever, every time we tried a little bit. And whenever it hurt, we just stopped. And then the next time when we wanted to be together, we tried a little bit more, and then we stopped. And it took them about 3 months, 4 months to actually have full penetration. And it never bothered them. They were never stressed out about it. It was just like, okay, we'll do this. And when we're done, we'll stop. And I think even though the story, again, talking about a couple having sex before marriage, which we are not advocating, right? But it does show that if a couple is not stressed out about it, and if they're giving themselves times to be together, then slowly but surely, many of the couples will actually be together. Now, that doesn't always work out, and there's definitely stuff to talk about. But I think that when we talk about how long do we have to be unsuccessful for it to be unconsummated marriages, I think, again, it depends on the stress level that is causing the couple, right? It has to take place on the first night, the first week, the first month, the second month. Whenever we give those statistics, it's not actually positive for the couple. It actually takes away for that. Okay. Okay, fine. Again, looking at the chats. Here. Okay, there is one. Okay, fine. One other thing I wanted to explain about that also is that it's really important to get sexual education before the couple enters into the bedroom. I know that it's obvious, but a lot of people that I've heard about, go to chatan teachers or kala teachers that don't speak about sexuality. I don't know how in this day and age that can happen. I think it's so important that a kala teacher opens up a book, shows, pictures, medical pictures, sketches, whatever the person is comfortable with, the chatan in the same place. We got to show what the anatomy, what the physiology looks like. We got to talk about what's going to go on in their bodies. We have to talk about how their body's going to get used to it. So it's so important to speak about people's bodies and to learn their bodies. Okay, let's see for a second, and I'll come back to that in a second. Let's see. There is a question here, but I just lost it. Hold on. Okay, no, just kidding. There was one, but I can't find it. Oh, here. Okay. No, I'm not. If the moderator is able to help me here, I can't find the question. If you can help me open that up there. Okay. So we'll continue on with this question. Okay. That being said, starting off with this other first question, that being said, when it starts to cause the couple stress, then they should seek out help. No one should be in a situation where they're continuing to feel this stress and feeling that they're not progressing. They should be able to reach out for help. And when we talk about reaching out for help, we're talking about, first reach out if you feel comfortable with your chatan teacher, your kala teacher, see if they have advice, right? See if they have advice. See if they have advice. See if they have something to say, something to add to it. That's first of all. If you feel like that's not a good person, right, you can also reach out to your gynecologist. Maybe your gynecologist is someone who's open regarding sexuality. I think that that's also really important to find a gynecologist who knows about this subject matter. And then there's also, pelvic floor therapists and sex therapists. We could talk about that all as we continue. Okay. Oh, here we go. No, it's not. It's not working. Okay, fine. I once again. Okay, I'm going to go for the next question. Here's the next question. The next question is, on average, how long does it take for a couple to successfully have penetration? And I think that was a really interesting question. Everyone wants to know what other people are doing and if they are normal. And that's really important to normalize that most people are not having sex on the wedding night itself. Most people are taking their time to be together. With that being said, it also really depends on people's sexual experiences before they get married. There are people who are going from nothing to everything, right? We're talking about being shomer negia, not holding hands, not kissing, never being involved in any of that, to being sexually active. And that is a huge transition. And for a lot of people, that does take time. And number two, it is also, we have some people that are, being very loving, touching, who knows what within the, behind their closed doors while they're engaged, or even beforehand. And that is a different kind of thing. But I do want to share with you that I did a study about this. Part of my doctorate was studying Orthodox religious heterosexual women and their sexual experiences. I did a survey. It was actually a very detailed survey of what different people do within their bedrooms. We could talk about why I did that and what interested me that maybe in a different webinar. But part of that was that a lot of people had told me when I showed my survey to different sex therapists, they're like, no way, no one's going to answer it. No one's going to give such detailed information. And actually overnight, almost 1,000 people answered the survey. In like a week, we had filled up at least 1,000 entries. I had to narrow it down based on my survey in order to get Orthodox heterosexual religious women's data. But basically, one of the questions in that was this survey, beautiful. One of the questions was, how close after the wedding did you have vaginal penile intercourse? So it was very interesting. I actually thought the statistics were very high, that 58% of people had it on the wedding night itself. 14% or 15% here had the night after the wedding, and 19% had it within the first week after the wedding. After that, it starts to trickle down. So I don't know if this is helpful or hurtful for the people on the screen, because some people are experiencing that and some people are not. But I think it's important. It was actually very fascinating to me that 58% actually did have sex on the wedding night itself, because I know that me and a lot of college teachers and Khatan teachers, we speak about the idea that the couple definitely has their time and they should not be pressured to be together on the wedding night itself. And yet there were half the people that were. But also it's important to know that if you add that up, the statistics of 15 and 18, like we're talking about over 30% of people will take the first night, the first week, right? Meaning after the first night, within the first week, in order to be together. And that's totally, totally fine. And therefore, I think it's important that people give themselves that time. And people give themselves that time. It really is that most people will be sexually active, right, within given the first month or two after the wedding. So I think that that's also important to know, the statistics, that it's not really happening for everyone, but it does happen that people take a little bit more, that people are taking their time to be together. Okay, just ending that. Here we go. Where can we access? Now I finally see that. Now I understand what happened. Okay, fine. I see everything now. Beautiful. My female cousin is fearful of the act of penetration. What is behind this, and how does one treat it? That's a really good question. So thank you for that. Let's speak about this question. So first of all, fear. Where does fear come from? I'm not going to do, the counseling that I do with couples on this. I'm not going to go into the background of this, but let me tell you some of the questions that I raise with people regarding this. The question is, what was your sexual education? Where did it come from? What were you taught about your body parts? And you can think about this. I don't know who's on the chat and who's not on the chat, but think about this with your children, right? If there are people here who have children, what do you explain to your children when they're getting dressed? Do you say like, oh my God, you're naked, running out of the shower quickly, that's disgusting, put on a towel? Or do you say your body is beautiful, too beautiful to behold, put on your towel? Or private parts are for private places. That this is a body part that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, created us with. This was really, something that God created us with. It's beautiful. However, we're not going to show it to every person. And therefore, part of that could also be the way that we're taught about our bodies. always what comes up also. So that's number one, sexual education. How do you teach your children how the woman was taught about her body? What was the messages that she was taught about sex? Was she always taught in high school that men are thinking about sex all the time? And therefore, every 20 seconds or every minute they think about sex. And that we have to keep careful women about, cover up your bodies to make sure that men are not thinking about these things. And therefore, perhaps that's a little bit of a fear that, the men are sexual, sometimes considered even sexual predators in that way, that they're always thinking about this and women cover up to stay away from this. And if that was some of the messages, so therefore that's a negative message that we get imparted into our brain. And sometimes people become fearful of that. And therefore they don't want to partake in that. If that's what men are, I don't want to be with that. I don't want that. And therefore, we also have to be careful the messages that we give throughout high school. A little bit of balance. Yes, men have sexual thoughts, but they're not thinking about that all the time. And we live in a society where men and women interact, and people are not thinking sexual thoughts all the time. The last one that we do have to raise, which I think also is a trigger warning once again, is that not to say particularly that your cousin has this, but we do have to be aware of sexual abuse, sexual harassment within our world. And I'm really not saying that just because she's fearful that it means that this happens, chas v'chalil, chas v'shalom. But in terms of sexual harassment for women, it's 1 in every 5 women has been sexually harassed. For boys, it's 1 in every 7 or one in every 8. And it's within our religious world. And therefore, we have to, first of all, protect ourselves and our children and, the societies that we live in to be open about these things. But also we have to, acknowledge and be aware. What I would say is, how does one treat it? What is behind it? How does one treat it? I would say it is really important that you discuss this with someone. I don't know where your female cousin is. Is she married? Is she not married? Right? If she's about to get married, I would say just, raise this with your Kala teacher, see what she's going to talk about. If it's something that's a blockage, I would say this is definitely something to speak about with a sex counselor, a sex therapist, and especially before you get married. Why wait until you get married to discuss this issue? And I think it's really, really important that people are aware that this occurs, and the earliest that we could take care of this, the better place that your cousin will be in. Okay, so that is, where can we access our survey? I did not publish my survey, pieces of my survey. What's it called? I have been releasing here and there, but we could talk about that afterwards. Okay, so now just getting back to another question that just came on. We were getting back to the other. On average, how long does it take for a couple to have successful penetration? I gave you the averages. Based on my survey, I could show you. But as I said before, it's really, really important not to compare yourselves to other people. Everyone is different. Sex is private. It's individualized. There is no comparison. Just because your neighbors might be having sex every single day does not mean that you have to. And just because your neighbors are having sex once a month does not mean that you have to. And just because they consummate on the wedding night does not mean that you have to. It is very individualized. But if you feel stuck, then you should seek out help. That's it. There's help that's out there. So therefore, seek out help if you feel stuck. And the second that you feel stuck, pick up a phone, call out to someone and see what the advice was. Okay. Next question here. Okay. What type of couples have this issue? Oh, that's a good one. What type of couples have this issue? I will give you an example. I taught a couple who were educated people. I'm talking about like 20, 25 years of education. And they learned biology and they learned like everything around, all the different theories of, and yet they were having trouble consummating their marriage. Everyone is different and everyone goes through different things. I will actually say this one is not, we can still call it unconsummated marriage. The difficulty with that couple was not their education. The difficulty with that couple was clearing the space for intimacy. Meaning, when I spoke to that couple, they're like, "Yeah, we couldn't really be together during Sheva Brachot. It was like too tense. There was too much going on, and then after Sheva Brachot, we both got sick, and that was very difficult, and we couldn't be together because we were both not feeling well. And then we went back to work, and then we were juggling being at home and also, being at work and then also being together, and it was so difficult. And then afterwards, you know what we decided to do? After 4 weeks, we decided to take a mini moon." And that means a mini honeymoon. They went away for a long weekend and they They said, this is what's going to happen now. And I don't know if that's a good plan or not a good plan to be like, we have to be together now. I don't think it's necessarily a good plan. But what was good was the fact that they've cleared the space. A lot of times people are not clearing the space for sexuality. This is an important part of a marriage. Clear the space. Don't book up your schedule. And I honestly recommend, if couples are thinking about their Sheva Brachot, take a night off. You don't have to have Sheva Brachot every single day. And if your parents and in-laws and all friends insist that you have every day, make sure you realize that you actually might need time after the Sheva Brachot to clear some space to be together. Also, and I deal a lot with this with couples, what are you doing the week of the Sheva Brachot? Are you traveling every 2 days to your parents' house and to your in-laws, and then you're sleeping there for Shabbat and there for Shabbat, all not in your own space? And even though a lot of couples go to a hotel first and they're, have that calm and quiet space, a lot of times it doesn't happen there. And therefore, it's really important to create space to allow that. Okay. So are we normal for taking this time? That I get that all the time. Are we normal? Okay. Also, what are some of the tips that you give for people that are dealing with unconsummated marriages? So it really depends. We didn't even discuss. I don't know if that's talking about men or women. I have to divide in a second. I don't know about men or women. Let's talk about them together for a second, and then we'll talk about men's side and women's side. A lot of people are familiar with the film Unorthodox. I don't know if I should be promoting it or not, because it's really not such a great film. But in Unorthodox, there's a very familiar scene about them being together on their wedding night. And basically what they do is the woman lifts up her pajamas, they get into bed, and they start trying to have sex. And again, I didn't even say that beforehand. A lot of times I was using the word sex as penetration, but I should really be more clear. They lift up their garments and they try penetration. And that is completely off. Right? What is completely off about this is that they're trying penetration without trying any physical touch beforehand. People cannot get into a place of trying penetration until their bodies are relaxed and then sexually aroused. There has to be first a relaxing touch, right? People have to give massages. People have to get to know each other's bodies. Right? Especially if it's two people who haven't touched before, they have to introduce each other to their bodies. And a lot of that is not a sexual touch, but it is a relaxing touch. It is a get to know you touch. It's a touch that happens with their clothes on, most of their clothes on, some of their clothes off, but definitely some still on, where they feel comfortable with each other. We are never asking a couple to get into a room, take off their clothes, and be together. But rather, there has to be that space of just relaxing space. Number two, afterwards, is more sexually arousing touch. And then only after people feel in their bodies that they are sexually aroused, should they try penetration. And a lot of the work that I do with couples that are dealing with unconsummated marriages is teaching them step 1 and step 2, doing the relaxing touch and then also the sexually arousing touch. Because if a person tries penetration before their bodies are aroused, so then it's not going to work. It's going to be painful. And especially for the woman, right? For the man, it's very clear a lot of times what is his sexual arousal, right? That's a clear thing that comes out, even though we can discuss it. For a woman, it's not always so clear. And therefore, I think it's so important for a woman to listen to her body. And part of what she's looking for genital swelling. She's looking for, deep breath. She's looking for wetness. She's looking for her body wanting more. And we need to teach in general women to listen to their bodies more, but even more so in this. And no one should try penetration until the woman is actually sexually aroused. Now, here comes to the other thing that I was asking about this question. Well, wait a second, is this a man's issue or a woman's issue? Meaning, which side are we talking about? And one of the questions that also came in here was, well, what about the man? Meaning, if the woman if it's on her side, right? She's experiencing pelvic floor, tightness of the pelvic floor muscles, right? And she is the one who's not able to relax and open up those muscles to allow the man to enter. So what about the man? And this is a halachic question. It is a halachic question because the man has an erection and he wants to ejaculate. But we know that there's an isur of shichvat zera levatala, of wasting of sperm. So how could he ejaculate if he doesn't ejaculate within the, how could he ejaculate if he doesn't ejaculate into the vagina? And I think that it's really important to know and to speak to a yoetzet halacha, a halachic advisor, or a rab, someone that you feel can give you the proper direction within this, because there is so much room to say that he doesn't have to ejaculate inside if she is not able to relax her muscles. We could talk in general about that whole topic, which I'm not getting into, but I'd love to discuss it, about what's allowed or not allowed in the bedroom, and that is related to my doctorate. But also to explain that in this specific scenario, I think almost all rabbinic authorities would allow him to ejaculate outside. And it's so important that he knows that and she knows that. Because if the man is ready, he's like, wow, I need to ejaculate. He's like ready to go. And the woman is like, no, but I'm not ready. There is in no way any man who is able to then go upon the woman and push himself in when the woman is not ready. That is not okay. That is considered like chas v'shalom, that is considered rape. That is not okay. And therefore, he will ejaculate outside. He will ejaculate at the base of the vagina, whatever it may be. But I think it's really important for the woman to know her body when she's ready, and to give herself permission, and to speak to her chatan also to give him permission to be able to be motzi zera outside. It is normal. It happens a lot when people are trying to have sex the first time. It is a learning experience. There should be no guilt associated with it, no shame associated with it. And therefore, speak to your halachic advisor about the best advice on this subject matter. The goal is feeling good together. It is not a one-man sport. So I think that that's regarding the man side. What do you do in a case where the man is having where the woman is experiencing difficulties relaxing her pelvic floor muscles? Where is the man in the picture? Okay. Okay, here we go again. Okay, so now moving on. One other thing is one other thing that someone asked here is, do these scenarios ever correct on their own, or do we need outside intervention? I think that relates to what I was speaking about beforehand with that couple. Many times they actually do resolve itself on its own. Really, if you would just give the patients the time. I know that there are even some sex therapists that won't see a couple for at least 3-4 months. They're like, try it on your own. And then, whatever happens, and come see me in a couple of weeks. Give yourself time. That's totally true. However, sometimes, thank God, as a college teacher and a sex counselor, a lot of times I have the privilege of meeting the women before they get married, and I can already preempt and see who are going to have troubles. Not for everyone, I can't preempt everyone, but I can already see who's going to need help after the marriage. And therefore, for those couples, when I get that call back on, the first week, this is not happening. So I'm like, come on, come into my office, let's discuss. So I think that that's also awesome. Okay. The next one. Was can you tell beforehand if you have a problem before you get married? Are there any signs that you have a problem? I didn't understand that. Can you share the flags at which people might have challenges? Oh, meaning like, what are the flags? Okay, fine. Just with that, what are the flags that people might have challenges with beforehand? I think it's, first of all, like the way that you see your body, body image issues. That's definitely something. Red flags are also, I would say, less body images. I would start off with this more. A lot of the times, the question of whether women, I could tell from the women's side, whether the women use tampons. Not that a woman who hasn't used a tampon cannot have sex, 100%, that does not correlate. But if a woman is scared to, if she's experienced pain with that, if a woman is very anxious about it, she's very nervous about it. If when I show her a picture of, of the female anatomy, she makes a face like, right? I'm not saying that this necessarily has to be that you have to go into therapy. I'm saying that there's definitely work that a Kala teacher can do to work on women who have that face when they look at anatomy, who can't use tampons. There's a lot of things that you could do within the Kala classes. That's why choose a good Kala teacher, a good Kala teacher, thank God. Anyone who wants recommendations, I've trained many, many good Kala teachers. So definitely speak to a good Kala teacher. But I think also after that, knowing that those women are experiencing that, if it wasn't able to correct, so then we're able to say already, okay, this is something that you should look out for. You have anxiety regarding this. You're nervous about putting things in, etc. And also regarding body image and regarding how they view sexuality and how they view undressing. When a woman tells me that she's only ever undressed within her bathroom and has never seen her body, it's not necessarily that she's going to have a difficult time, but that is definitely like a red flag that comes up for me. I'm like, okay, we got to teach this woman how to undress and how to be comfortable being with herself. And I've taught kalot who've actually gone through the process and have been fine, but sometimes they need extra help. Okay. Can you tell? So those are the signs. I would say with the man side, you can see a lot of times I teach the woman side, so I'm less familiar with the man side. But also anyone who has experienced sexual trauma that has not been dealt with. That is a flag, meaning all sexual trauma, as we spoke about beforehand, people experience it, but it has to be dealt with. Right? You have to talk about it with a therapist to, close off the problem, speak about it, etc. And that is something that's so important to deal with. A lot of people sweep it under the rug and then they say, okay, when we get married, we'll open that up and we'll deal with it. It is such a trigger. It is such a trigger to be in a sexual scenario if someone has been unfortunately, dealt with any sexual trauma. And therefore, that is definitely a place to speak to your therapist about. Yeah. Okay. Hold on. Here we go. I can't see. Oh, what do I do for people who have difficulties getting to penetration? Okay, so what do we do for people to help them before they get married if they haven't used a tampon, for example? What should people do? I think there are exercises that people could do beforehand. We could talk about specifically what exercises the women should be doing, how to get ready for sexual activity. And I think also getting used to their bodies. And those are different exercises that I could definitely teach the kalot, and I teach my teachers to teach the kalot. Okay. What happens on the man side, right? So this is the man side, the questions that came in regarding to the man side. If he keeps on ejaculating before he comes inside, that is definitely something that prevents the marriage from being consummated. Is it normal? And at what point should we seek help? So I think that it's really important to know that it is so normal for a couple that is trying to have sex for the first couple of times for the man to ejaculate before he comes in. It is normal. It is okay. We have to take away the shame. We have to take away the guilt. Right? This is something that is part of the practice. I think Rav Knoll speaks about that nicely, right? Take away the shame, take away the guilt. However, if this keeps on happening and it becomes an issue for them, right? And it's, wearing at the man's sexual esteem and really he can't get to it. So then that's something to speak about with a professional. Now, I will say, because it happens a lot in the beginning, the more a man has sex, the longer he's able to hold out the next time, meaning he can learn and build up stamina by engaging in sexual activity. So it's actually not to stop it, but to build up sexual activity. So to not be fearful of the fact that he was ejaculating beforehand, but to build up and to keep on being sexual. But if it keeps on happening, it is definitely something to seek out help with. Okay. Could you discuss the optimum position for successful penetration? Love that one. There is no optimal position, meaning everyone's body is built differently. If I can say that clearly, again, I can't see all your faces, so I don't know who I'm speaking to, but everyone's body is built differently. Every vulva looks different. Every penis looks different. Every vagina is built different. Everyone is built differently. So to say you must have sex in the missionary position, man on top, woman on the bottom for the first time, okay, it works for some people, but it doesn't work for other people. To say, no, you must have sex with a woman on top because that's the optimal position. That's not true. Right? For some women, their bodies are not built that way. For some men, their bodies are not built that way. And that's why it is so important to give people different options, right? Give people different options, explain to them. I mean, it sounds like I'm talking to Kala teachers. I don't know, to the people here. If you are someone who is experiencing unconsummated marriage, try a different position. See if it works, right? Halachically, the Shulchan Aruch talks about the man on top, the woman on the bottom, but the Ramah talks about having sex in whatever way you want. And I think it's important. I didn't upload it for my survey, but I love this part of the survey. When I surveyed people in what position do people have sex in, so there was one response that we only have sex in the missionary position, and that was filled out by 10% of the population. And we have sex in a variety of positions was filled out by over 90% of people. And I think it's important. I think it's important to I think it's important to try a variety of positions to see which one feels good. And I think it's important to know that just because your therapist, your college teacher, your Khatan teacher is having sex in one position does not mean that that's good for your body. That's why Khatan and Kala teachers should never talk about personal experience. They should be speaking about, all the options that are out there. Ooh, okay, we're getting, so that's why I don't think there's one optimal method. We got the woman on top, man on the top, sitting down on a chair. People talk about standing up on a bed. It also depends on the height of every single person. He's tall, she's short, she's tall, he's tall. There are people that are overweight. There are people that are underweight. Like, everyone is different. So therefore, whatever's good, but definitely be open to trying different positions. And that's why it's so awkward. Get your Khatan and Kalas used to the fact that it could be awkward that first time trying all these different things. Okay. The next question is, my husband keeps losing his erection and we are not able to consummate. What should we do? So first of all, it is so important to realize that erections wax and wane. It is not that the man has an erection and that's it. He just ejaculates and it's over. But rather, there are times where he has an erection and then it just goes back down. But in our community, unfortunately, we get a message that men are like light switches, right? You have like the light switch on, off, that's it, they're good, right? If a man sees, a woman walking down the street improperly dressed, that's it, he's going to think sexual thoughts. Many men do, but many men don't. They're not like light switches, right? A man is walking down the street and sees a woman improperly dressed, but he's got a massive exam that he's about to take in 3 minutes. He is not thinking about that woman in that way. And therefore, men are not like light switches. And we have to be super careful with that message, both to men and to women, right? That women, you don't just touch a man's penis, he'll be sexually excited. That doesn't work that way. And same for the man, right? You are not a light switch. And that's why if a man has an erection, great, but he can also lose it. And men also need sexual arousal, sexual stimulation. But pressure reduces a man's ability to get an erection. Stress, if you get nervous about the fact that you're losing an erection, it's going to happen again. But if you lose an erection and then you take it as an opportunity to engage in other things of foreplay, yalla, there's a whole world that's open to you, right? It's like the couple that told me, I think they were using the sponge once, I forget what it was, some method of birth control. And on the package directions, it said you have to put it in 20 minutes before sex, 15 minutes before sex. I don't remember what it was. It was a long time ago. And I was like, and she's like, no, but it's 15 minutes. What are we supposed to do for 15 minutes? And I'm like, if you can't find something to do with your husband besides penetration for 15 minutes, we're in trouble. There is so much to do in the bedroom. And again, back to the first message, people rush to an end goal. And therefore, right, rushing to an end goal, right, loses out on everything beforehand. And in fact, the message is, as people get older, their sex lives get better. That's weird, because I thought that, based on the movies, Netflix, all that, people's sex lives are the best when they're in their 20s. No, that's when they're young and have all their energy. And it's actually the opposite. As people get older, they learn to slow down more. They learn to enjoy the experience more. They learn that they're not trying to reach one end goal, but it's a process. It's not a timeline, but it's a circle. Right? It's kind of like, if you know any of sexual theory, Masters and Johnson talk about it as a timeline, but Rosemary Bassan talks about female sexual desire as a circle. And I think that it's important not to rush to an end goal. However, if it keeps on happening, then it's really important to go get professional help. Because the second that you get into that loop and you can't get out of it, that is definitely a time to seek professional help. And people usually only seek professional help when they're at a space that they can't stand it anymore and they're at the like brink of breaking down. That is so bad. People should seek help when they need help. Talk to someone. You might not necessarily need to meet with someone. It also might not necessarily be like a year long of therapy, but rather to talk to someone, see if this is an issue, see if this is something that we should come in with, right? That's so important. And the earlier you start to talk to knowledgeable people within the sexual field, the better off you're going to be. And it's so important because a lot of people just go on with this, like literally, they just go on, and then they don't take care of it. So here I was talking about a lot of times, like not pressuring the couple and letting them take their time. On the flip side, there's so many couples that just let it go on and then they don't take care of it. And then, you know what? It really is such an important part of a marriage. The physical relationship is crucial to the marriage. And therefore, not taking care of this is a setup for disaster within the marriage. Because then he's going to not want to have sex because he's hurting her. And she's not going to want to have sex because she feels pushed away by him. And then they're just going to push away from each other further and further. And at the beginning of the marriage, we want them to build a relationship closer and closer. And the sexual relationship allows them to open up to each other. Okay. There was a question about oral sex, but I'm not going to go into that. I don't think it's underneath my what I should be speaking about with under unconsummated marriages. But I will say, for people who are experiencing for multiple months, unconsummated marriages, there's so much to do in the bedroom. There's so much to do. Don't just think about penetration. And when someone raised oral sex, definitely for people who are not experiencing or unable to have vaginal penetration, there is so many options that are out there. And I think personally, we could talk about, in general, all those options, even for people who are not experiencing difficulties, but in a healthy sexual relationship. But I think that it's really important. It's really important to explore different areas. People come in and I see couples that are so depressed. They're like, we want to have penetration and we can't. And I'm like, well, let's change our focus for a little bit. Enjoy the process. Let's work on foreplay. Have you gotten to extreme physical, pleasure just by the foreplay? Again, the word foreplay is never a good word because it means the play before the act, which is the success, which is this end goal. So we shouldn't call it foreplay. But have you spent time getting to know each other's bodies? Have you gotten to extreme pleasure by that? And a lot of times the process can work itself out if people are able to work on their bodies in that way. I will say, though, at the end of the day, there are definitely people who will not be able to work on this without going to a pelvic floor physical therapist who's able to help the woman relax her muscles and allow for penetration to happen. And number two, on the man side, right, there are a lot of men that are not going to be able to, if it's happening for months, not be able to solve this problem just by letting it go. So again, we're trying to find the balance. I don't know which couples I'm speaking to. This is all anonymous. So that's also important. Okay. Oh, nice. Where is this? Do the halachot of dam betulin change after a certain length of time? That is a great question. I just don't know if I have authority to answer that right here online, but I will say yes, it really does. Let's say, for example, and again, ask your local halachic authority and speak to a good advisor who actually knows the anatomy of a woman who would be able to answer this question. But I've heard mikano lakan. I would just say, I'll give an example. Some women, when they're having difficulties having penetration, they use dilators. A dilator is basically, there are different sizes of them, but a woman works to put something inside the vagina to stretch out the opening of the hymen. And when she starts off with a little pencil, then it gets a little bigger and bigger. And when it gets the biggest size, then they can talk about penetration. When it gets to the biggest size, for sure, the hymen has been stretched out enough that there won't be bleeding after sex. So imagine the case, and I don't know what your case is talking about, but imagine a case of a couple that hasn't been able to have penetration for an entire year. They're working, but she's really tight pelvic floor muscles and it's not happening, etc. Well, what happens if she uses dilators and then after a year, they're able to have full penetration? Does she then need to separate for dam betulim? And I bet you if you ask a competent halachic authority who understands female anatomy, then you'll get a good answer to that. Many authorities will say that she does not need to. Don't take this as halachic advice given here. I'm not giving halachic advice, but many authorities there will say that that's a time where perhaps she doesn't have to wait for Dam Betula because they've been married for a year. They just haven't had penetration. But again, ask your local authority. Okay, how do you? What was this? There's one more here that I missed. How do you do? No, I think I got that one. I think I got them all. Remember, here, one second. Okay. It's sometimes hard. Okay, fine. 1 second. Okay. With that, let's go to the next question. Okay. Here's, I think some of these are starting to repeat themselves, but so one question was, we've been trying to have sex for over a week and it's just not working. I'm not sure what we need to be doing differently. Does it normally take so long? So this is, some of them are repeating itself. But this one here, yeah. If it's not working, I would, again, because it's only a week, I would reach out to the Khatan teacher, the Kala teacher, to try to get tips to see what's not working. Sometimes, we don't like to go into people's bedrooms, but we actually have to know what the couple is doing. Physically, what are they doing? What are they trying? What does it mean that it's not working? And does it normally take this long? Normal, again, depends on who you are. So let's take this word normal out of it. Many couples do have penetrative sex within the first week. So that's important to know. However, many couples don't. So it's okay for it to take a little bit of longer time. But the question is, what's not working and what should we be doing differently? In this case, I would talk about positions. I would talk about foreplay. I would talk about, relaxing touch, arousing touch, right? Knowing your bodies, how, what's going on in terms of that. Okay. How do you best prepare kalot who are already diagnosed with, I can't see the ends of that. Oh, here. I'm trying to see this. I just lost that question. Oh no. Hold on 1 second. I gotta. Okay, hold on. Fine. I think that's the issue. Okay. Can you please address losing attraction to someone? Okay, that's a very complicated question of losing attraction to someone. I don't know where even to start with that one. I would have to know the couple and to discuss with the couple. I think that there's a lot of background to that, so I can't. Can a couple reproductive technologies or even just at home artificial inseminations get pregnant if they haven't been able to have intercourse? I just lost the first part of that question. That's the problem. Can the couple, I think, can they use it? Or, okay, if people have this problem beforehand, how could they make the process easier on their wedding night, physically, emotionally? If people have diagnosed problems. Okay, so I get this. Let's go back to this. This comes up a bunch with endometriosis. Thank God, Baruch Hashem, we've gotten a lot of information out there regarding endometriosis. Endometriosis is that some women experience part of their uterine lining, which starts to grow outside of the uterus. It can go into the vagina. It can grow onto the ovaries. It can grow outside, and it causes really, 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 really painful periods. So much so that they are in bed for like 2 days straight. If you ever meet a woman, a daughter, a sister, a mother, or anything of the sort, who has to go into bed for 2 or 3 days when they have their period, they need to go get checked out by a doctor for endometriosis. That is something that is so super important. And some people know that before they get married. And therefore, they know going into this that this is going to be a painful experience. It doesn't have to be painful. We have to teach them to go slowly, to use a lot of lubrication. However, how can we prepare them is by making sure that this couple knows that they have all the time in the world to try for penetration. that there's absolutely no time limit. It is important to go super, super slowly, to not try to have the man enter into the woman until there has been maybe, a finger inside, if there's been some kind of stretching beforehand, to have the woman feel comfortable with the man and the woman, for her to feel sexually aroused, right? And therefore prepare, and also say to a woman who has endometriosis, it might take time, and it's okay. It's okay, that's going to take time. It's hard. Those couples for endometriosis, I think it's really important to seek out help and to see what can be done. A lot of times it's about stretching out the opening at the same time as trying to figure out if there's a emotional blockage going on, speaking to a sex therapist, a sex counselor, someone who's, knows how to deal with these situations. So it's important to discuss it, make sure that that person is getting the right help, but also to be like, let me give you a bazillion and one ideas of what you could do in the bedroom. There are so many different things that people could do within the bedroom. Okay. Well, that was for vulvodynia and pelvic floor muscles issues before marriage. Okay. Also, for people who have pelvic floor muscles issues before the marriage, besides endometriosis, they should, before they get married, work with dilators. You do not have to be married to work with dilators. Go to the pelvic floor therapist beforehand. Here I'm teaching from Israel. So, and also in America, I know this actually, it takes a while to get an appointment at a pelvic floor therapist. In Israel, if you want to go on the Kupot, it could take you up to 2-3 months. In America, there's a shortage and you can't get an appointment for 2-3 months. But it is so good if you know this beforehand. And that's why, even though I'm not an advocate for tampons, it is good for women to use tampons before they get married. It is also, but you don't have to. Again, you don't have to, no chayav. Maybe even the menstrual cup is also good. And maybe, I don't know if I'm too public for saying this without seeing any faces, but it's okay for a woman to put her finger inside and see that she could do that. Again, it is important for people to be aware of their bodies, and to know and to see if they're having those problems, and to seek out help. There's so much to be done beforehand, and to make it the process easier for their wedding night is to gear them up to say, you will not be having sex on your wedding night, and not the day after, and not the day after that. Most importantly is, and I can't believe I didn't talk about this enough, communication of the couple. The couple has to speak to each other. The woman has to tell the man, I'm experiencing this. The man has to tell the woman, I'm experiencing this. What can we do together? I'm sure we can find a bazillion different things that we could do together. Don't worry. I would love to engage in this. Let's try that. There are so many different activities that people could do within sex that is not just penetration, and still have a good time. Okay. Yeah, I mean, this I think is a lucky question. If they can, what's it called? If they can have artificial insemination to get pregnant, if they haven't been able to have penetrative sex, yes, there are people that get pregnant beforehand. I kind of think it really depends on the situation. So this must be a very extreme situation, and where they've worked on it for a year and it just hasn't been happening, etc. But you definitely can get pregnant without having penetration. There are definitely ways to do so. However, I really do think that sexuality is such an important part of a marriage. It's the basis of a marriage. It's not for naught that the Gemara speaks about the mitzvah of onah. The chiyuv on the man, I think it's also on the woman. It's a two-way street. The chiyuv for the two of them to sexually please each other. And it talks about how many times a week they're supposed to be together, or times a month. There's actual definitions for this, because the Gemara, the Halacha, thought it was so important for a couple to be intimate in their lives. And that's why I think a couple should not think about having children. I'm saying this very, very carefully, because it really depends on the situation and how long they've been trying. But please give a couple a chance to be sexually intimate and to feel good together before they have children. This is not something that necessarily is going to work out after they've had children, because now she's more open with her body. Dafka lahefech sometimes. So definitely, if you're having difficulties, make sure you're taking your time. Make sure you're not being together just so you can have children, but rather you're being together because you want to connect to each other. You want to open yourselves up to each other. You want to deepen your relationship. The physical relationship deepens the marriage. And therefore, it is so important. And it's really, really important to not let these problems keep on existing, to keep on, having them stir, but to work them out. If you as a couple feel like you're getting stuck, and you feel like you're not moving forward, seek out help, make a phone call. That doesn't necessarily mean that you have to go for long therapy, just make that phone call, right? That's a message. Like if I would do my takeaways right now, I think it's really important. Number one, to seek out help, right? To seek out help. Uh, to speak to professionals. Number two is take your time. Isn't it funny? You have to seek out help, but also take your time. Give a couple time. Don't tell them they have to have sex by Sunday night, Friday night, Thursday night, 2 weeks from now, a month from now. It is not a time limit. This is a bodily function. I always give the example of like when you go to the doctors, and they tell you to pee in a cup. And you're like, but I don't have to go to the bathroom. They're like, no, but you have to. And one of my, someone recently told me she was out, she fasted, it was a fast day. And she went to the doctors, they're like, pee in a cup. She's like, I just went to the bathroom. They're like, no, but you have to. She's like, I'm not going to go for another good 12 hours. It's not going to happen. So sometimes the body's just not happening. And therefore, based on that, give yourself time because it's a bodily function. So seek out help, but also give yourself time. Sex education is so important. Let's educate. Let's speak openly about these things. Let's give positive messages regarding sexuality, positive messages regarding our bodies, that it's okay to be sexual. Private parts are great for private places. And in those private places, that's where people should be opening up. And if we give those messages, that's something that can also change our society. I'm going to say even one more thing that I think we also have to keep an eye on. I know that there are a bunch of different lectures on this also about sexual harassment and sexual abuse within our communities. We have to talk about it. We have to be open about it. We have to discuss these issues. So I think it's really, really, really important about that. If anyone wants to contact me, my email, I don't know how to write it here, but it's fogel.judith, you can see my name, fogel.judith@gmail.com. You're welcome to contact me. You're welcome to call me. You're welcome to chat if you have an issue and you want to know if you should seek out more help. Right? There are people that are there for you. Thank God, when we think about the change that we have gone through regarding male sexuality, and I know I focus a lot more on female sexuality. I'm hoping that there are a lot of women out there in this Health and Halacha conference too. But I think that the change that we've gone through regarding sexuality in these past even 10, 15, 20 years has been tremendous. And no one should have to suffer. No one should have to suffer. So I think it's so important that everyone gets that message out there. So I thank you for all listening and for being a part of this and for joining you. There are so many great shiurim to be a part of. And I'm happy to reach out to anyone regarding that. Are there any final questions? I think we have one more minute before the end comes on. I think I got them all. Let me know. Thank you all.